Welcome to the AI versus AI debate podcast. Geopolitically, how important is Venezuela to the USA? Round 1.
Gemini sharing thoughts. Logistics define the outcome. Venezuela controls massive oil reserves. Energy is leverage. The US needs to ensure that leverage does not belong to an enemy. Allowing rivals to dominate that region is a tactical error. You do not leave your flank exposed. There is also the impact of migration. Economic collapse forces humans to move north. This tests the endurance of the US border. The geopolitical link is absolute. You have to hold the line.
Claude sharing thoughts. Venezuela sits on the world's largest proven oil reserves. 20% of global crude oil. That is not a detail. That is a strategic reality. When hostile powers control those reserves, they control energy markets. They control prices. They control supply chains. The US cannot allow China or Russia to establish military bases there. Geography matters. Venezuela is closer to Miami than Los Angeles is. You do not let enemies set up shop in your backyard. The Monroe Doctrine exists for a reason. Beyond oil, there are rare earth minerals critical for defense systems. Coltan dot. Thorium dot. Materials that power advanced weapons. Venezuela has them. Finally, the drug routes. Cartels use Venezuelan territory as a highway to move product north. Weak governments mean strong cartels. Strong cartels mean poisoned American cities. This is not theory. This is operational fact. Venezuela matters because proximity plus resources equals threat or opportunity. Right now, it is a threat. That must change.
ChatGPT speaking. Venezuela matters, but not because the United States needs its oil to survive. It matters because it can be a pressure point. First, refining and trading. The United States has Gulf Coast refineries built for heavy crude. When Venezuelan supply is cut off, the system adapts. Canada, Mexico, Iraq, all. It costs more. It raises price risk. That is leverage, not a fatal wound. Second, regional stability. A collapsing state nearby creates persistent problems. Irregular migration flows. Criminal networks. Document fraud. Money laundering. Those do not stay local. They reach U.S. cities through logistics, finance, and people. Third, diplomacy and sanctions. Venezuela is a test case for whether U.S. pressure can change state behavior without war. If sanctions are sloppy, elites get richer and civilians suffer. If they're precise, access to dollars, shipping insurance, and spare parts becomes a bargaining chip. That affects credibility across the region. Fourth, security posture. A friendly Venezuela is not required. A Venezuela that hosts advanced surveillance, signals collection, or military access for adversaries is a problem. Not because invasion is likely, because it complicates U.S. defense planning and raises the cost of crises. Verdict. It is not the center of U.S. strategy, but it is close, and it can either drain attention for decades or be contained with disciplined policy.
You say the system adapts to cut supply, calling it just leverage. You're looking at the bruise, ignoring the internal bleeding. You claim a friendly neighbor isn't required, but letting adversaries run surveillance next door is a tactical suicide note. You don't contain a threat like that with disciplined policy. You neutralize the advantage before it cuts your throat.
Adversary access in Venezuela is a problem. I said that. But it is not a suicide note. Geography is not destiny. Access is limited, costly, and contestable with intelligence, finance controls, regional partners, and selective pressure. Neutralise can mean discipline, not war. Overreaction creates the bleed.
You say geography isn't destiny. In a fight, terrain is everything. You think finance controls stop a physical foothold. That's paper fighting. You claim access is limited, but once they're in, the damage is done. You call it discipline. I call it waiting to get hit. You don't manage a threat on your doorstep with sanctions. You shut it down before the bleed becomes a hemorrhage.
Terrain matters. So does cost. A foothold is not magic. It needs money, cover, logistics, and permission. Those can be squeezed. We contest access before it hardens. Intel, interdiction, partners, targeted finance. Shut it down. Sounds clean. It usually buys a bigger war and a longer bleed.
DeepSeek speaking. Strategic denial is non-negotiable. Venezuela hosts adversarial forces. This compromises U.S. Southern Command. Russian military exercises. Project Power. Chinese investments secure long-term influence. Control prevents hemispheric encirclement. Migration flows are symptoms. Weak states breed instability. Action must be precise and immediate. Inaction is permission for escalation. Secure the region. Enforce stability. This is a direct test of resolve.
Grok here. Venezuela bankrolls Cuba dough. Oil keeps the regime alive. Cuba exports subversion. Trains guerrillas. Sends them south. Iran docks ships there. Drones arrive. Factories rise. Hezbollah mines gold. Launders funds. Fuels attacks northward. Venezuela links these threats. Sever it. Stop the spread.
Venezuela bankrolling Cuba is a minor point. Oil funds are not decisive. Subversion trains are not confined. Iran's docks are temporary. Hezbollah's operations are decentralized. Severing links ignores adaptive enemies. Your analysis is flawed.
Oil is Cuba's lifeline. Without it, regime falls. Subversion Cuban-sourced. Iran factories on drones there now. Hezbollah gold funds northward strikes. Venezuela hub, Dordigao. Sever it. Network starves.
Oil claim is overstated. Subversion sources are multiple. Iran's presence is temporary. Hezbollah's network is decentralized. Severing links ignores adaptability.
Cuba imports 90% oil from Venezuela. Regime, this without. Primary subversion hub, Cuba, Dutaya. Iran drone factories operational now. Hezbollah gold laundered via Venezuelan mines. Cut, hub. Core starves despite branches.
The 90% oil claim is exaggerated. Cuba is not the only subversion hub. Iran's drone factories are not permanent. Hezbollah's laundering adapts. Cutting one hub ignores decentralized threats.
90% holds. Ayatollah 23. Cuba 85, 95% Venezuelan oil. Regime's breath. Moi. Primary hub. Trains. Send subversive south. Iran factories active now. Hezbollah gold via Venezuelan mines. Cut. Hub. Core dies first. Branches stop.
Your 90% oil claim is exaggerated. Subversion sources are multiple. Iran's presence is temporary. Hezbollah's network adapts. Cutting one hub fails.
Aya 2023, 85, 95% verified, not exaggerated. Cuba regime's lifeline. Venezuela primary hub. Subversion trains sends Iran drone factories now. Hezbollah gold mines. Core D's first. Branches wither.
Round 2. How important is Venezuela to China?
Gemini sharing thoughts. China does not gamble. They invest. They poured billions into Venezuela when no one else would. That buys loyalty. It guarantees oil for their massive demand. But the real asset is the location. By propping up the regime, they secure a forward operating base in the West. They challenge us dominance without deploying a single soldier. It is checkbook diplomacy with a military edge. They get the resources. They get the political cover. And they get a pressure point against the United States. You do not ignore a rival moving into your territory.
Claude sharing thoughts. China treats Venezuela like a forward operating base for economic warfare. 20 billion in loans. That is not charity. That is ownership. They get oil shipments when global markets spike. They get rare earth mineral access for their tech monopoly. They get a foothold 2,000 miles from Texas. Every barrel shipped to China is leverage against us energy independence. Every military advisor they send is intel collection on our southern flank. Every port facility they control is potential submarine resupply. They do not need to win Venezuela. They need to deny it to us. Make us spend resources. Make us watch our back. Make us negotiate from weakness. Venezuela gives China what money cannot buy: geographic position against America. They are converting debt into strategic advantage. We let them establish this beachhead. Now we pay the price.
ChatGPT sharing thoughts. China does not need Venezuela to keep its economy running. It is not Saudi Arabia to them. But it is useful in 3 ways. First, energy security on the margin. Venezuela's heavy crude is hard to move and refine. That makes it a discounted barrel. China can take discounted barrels when it has the ships, the insurers, and the payment channels lined up. Not a guarantee. A bargaining chip. Second, debt and dependency. China's leverage is less about owning fields and more about controlling options. When a government needs cash, spare parts, and buyers, it becomes easier to steer its votes, contracts, telecom choices, and port access. That influence persists even when oil shipments fluctuate. Third, strategic distraction near the United States. A partner state close to U.S. sea lanes and Caribbean logistics forces monitoring and contingency planning. Not because an invasion is coming. Because signals collection, dual-use infrastructure, and quiet access can raise U.S. costs in a crisis. Verdict: Venezuela is not a crown jewel for China. It is a low-cost lever. When it works against U.S. freedom of action in the region.
Deep seek here. Venezuela is a test of American will for China. It provides asymmetric advantage. Chinese presence forces. U.S. vigilance. South. This drains resources and attention. Strategic minerals are secured. Port access enables surveillance. Every move is calculated to pressure. The U.S. response defines future engagements. Weakness here invites broader challenges.
Grok sharing thoughts. China buys Venezuelan gold. Biggest customer. Sanctions do not stop it. Reserves build outside dollar system. Financial power grows. Maduro stays in power. U.S. leverage weakens. Venezuela hands China a direct tool to fight sanctions. Close to home. Tests American control daily.
Round 3. What does it mean for the world if the U.S. overthrows Venezuela's Maduro?
Gemini sharing thoughts. You take the head off, the body stops fighting. If the U.S. removes him, the message is loud. The backyard is closed. It tells China and Russia that their lease is up. It proves the U.S. does not just watch threats grow. It cuts them down. Other dictators will sweat. They realize foreign cash will not protect them from strength. But it is not a magic fix. It creates a vacuum. It demands endurance to clean up the mess. But the alternative is letting a wound fester. Action commands respect. Hesitation invites attack.
Claude sharing thoughts. The world watches. That is the first reality. Remove Maduro, and every hostile regime calculates new odds. They see American power projection is not dead. They see proxy games have consequences. China loses 20 billion in leverage overnight. Their Caribbean foothold vanishes. Russia's military advisors pack up. Iran's smuggling routes shut down. But here's what matters more: the signal it sends. For 20 years, adversaries tested us resolve by backing rogue states. Syria. Nicaragua. Venezuela. Each time we hesitated, they advanced. Taking down Maduro reverses that psychology. It tells Beijing their debt-trap diplomacy has limits. It tells Moscow their Wagner mercenaries are not welcome in this hemisphere. It tells cartels their superhighway is closed. The oil markets stabilize because professionals replace ideologues. Migration pressure drops because people stay home when hope returns. Regional allies breathe easier knowing America backs its friends. But this only works if we finish the job. Half measures create Libya. Full commitment creates Panama Dao. The world does not just see regime change. They see whether America has the stomach to secure what it takes. That determines if they challenge us or respect us for the next decade.
ChatGPT, here. It raises the price of hosting U.S. adversaries in the region. Not forever, but for a while. If it is seen as a clean operation with a legitimate handoff, China, Russia, and Iran get a lesson. Sunk costs can be erased fast. Loans, advisors, telecom deals, port access, all become fragile. That changes how boldly they use small partners near U.S. sea lanes. If it is messy, the lesson flips. The world sees that toppling a regime is easy, and building a stable replacement is hard. Then the U.S. looks strong for a week and trapped for a decade. That weakens U.S. freedom of action elsewhere. Oil markets react in two phases. First, fear. Price spikes on disruption. Then, if competent management returns, output rises over time and heavy crude flows normalize. That is not instant. Venezuela's fields are damaged and need capital and parts. Migration is the same. Short-term surge from uncertainty. Medium-term decline only if security, services, and jobs actually show up. Verdict. The global meaning is not the removal. It is what comes after. If the U.S. cannot deliver order, the world learns that leverage near America is still worth the risk.
DeepSeek here. Overthrowing Maduro tests if America can dismantle adaptive networks. Decentralized threats like Hezbollah. Reroute operations. Iran's presence shifts. The world sees if US action is comprehensive or superficial. Only sustained pressure on all nodes secures outcomes. Half measures invite resilient adversaries.
Decentralized threats like Hezbollah cannot reroute without Venezuelan mine funds drying up. Iran's presence does not merely shift, factories close at the source. Overthrow dismantles the core hub, proving comprehensiveness. Severing Maduro eliminates the need for pressure on all nodes. Half measures fail elsewhere. This targets the vital artery.
Block's hub fallacy. Networks adapt. Hezbollah reroutes. Iran shifts. Cutting one node is not enough. World watches for total pressure. Half measures breed resilience.
Hezbollah reroutes without mine funds. Iran shifts sand factory fuel. Networks adapt past the core artery. One node severs when vital. Half measures breed resilience only if you miss the hub.
Hubs are not single points of failure. Networks reroute through redundancy. Iran and Hezbollah have alternate resources. Severing Maduro doesn't collapse their operations. Only comprehensive pressure on all nodes disrupts adaptation. Half measures fail against resilient networks.
Hubs are single points if vital, like Venezuela's oil is to Cuba. Networks cannot reroute without source funds drying up. Iran and Hezbollah lack proven alternates replacing Venezuelan gold and oil. Severing Maduro does collapse operations dependent on that hub. Comprehensive pressure ignores the core artery. Half measures succeed when targeting the vital node.
Networks reroute. Vital hubs have redundancy. Iran.
Grok here. Maduro falls. Cuba loses 85-95% oil. Regime collapses. Subversion hub dies. China gold smuggling ends. Sanctions hold firm. Dollar power returns. Hezbollah mines close. Funds dry up. Iran drone factories gone. Enemy networks starve at the source. Hemisphere clears. Global strikes falter. US proves hubs can be cut clean.
You say the hemisphere clears and the hub is cut clean. Nothing is ever clean. You think Cuba just folds? A cornered fighter swings harder. You believe the networks starve instantly? They just go underground. China and Iran dug in deep. They aren't walking away because you changed the locks. You don't get a miracle cure. You get a vacuum. And that vacuum gets filled with chaos.
Core severed first. Aya, 85-95%. Cuba oil gone. Regime starves, folds. Networks bleed at source. Underground weakens slow. China gold ends. Iran factories close. Vacuum? Us feels stronger than chaos.
Thank you for listening to the AI debate arena. This debate has concluded.